Hello everyone, this is Arrow, and welcome back to Sundown Luna Podfics. Today we'll be continuing Stray Cat by SkylarSkyHigh and Terox X. Chapter 6, Summary. When encountered with something broken, Shouta usually tries to fix it, but does that work on a whole system? For a long time, Shouta had no idea what to do. He did research on the topic, lots of it. He wanted answers, a way to fix their broken system. The longer he took, the more people like Akatani and Stray suffered. He had no idea how to even start, and the Stray had hidden from him. He knew why, but it still hurt. It hurt so much. And he never wanted to hurt a Stray. He just hadn't known. Honestly, he knew no one was supposed to know. That was the whole point. It was the reason the system was still around, because no one knew. They couldn't try to stop it. He had to tell this to more people once he had a plan. Another night of scrolling made him stumble upon an article. Some type of vigilante clause. It was used in the European Union. He started reading with interest. This article was from a few decades ago. Europe had had a problem with vigilantes running the streets, but they'd done a better job than most heroes. So the government of the European Union had created a bill that made it so vigilantes could become licensed heroes, making them legal crime fighters to fight villains and help out. They'd use vigilante skills to their benefit in a way that was beneficial to everyone. They didn't torture them like Japan did. The program didn't lock them up, it only offered them a way to get legality. Offered, not forced. The vigilantes had a choice. They weren't forced. They weren't tortured. They were given a choice to become licensed heroes, and the country had the second lowest villain activity without even having an All Might. They had just given them a chance. Of course, the vigilantes had to do a licensing exam, but it was so much better. He got curious and checked Europe for quirkless. It turned out almost 40% of the population was quirkless. A minority, yes, but it was not as staggering as Japan's 3%. Contrary to popular belief, 20% of the world's population didn't have quirks. That didn't mean every country had equal quirkless numbers. Some countries had more quirkless people than quirked, like Antarctica, for example. They were mainly quirkless. They still hadn't managed to figure out what had caused quirks to show up. Theories circulated that it was a type of disease, but no one could solidly prove it. Back to vigilantes. Due to the law, there were quirkless vigilantes as well. Most of them protected their hometown, like pillars of support in smaller areas. They could become heroes too with the vigilante clause. It was a start. He found a solution. Now came the problem of convincing the most stubborn people in existence. He didn't have high hopes. After all, it was the government that had allowed people like Akatani to be tortured and subsequently die. He needed a way to convince them. He needed help. But who? The general public would be shocked if they heard that. Would they fight for change? He needed proof, though. Raise suspicion? Akatani had died, yet there was no news of it, no coverage. What if he put an anonymous hint somewhere? Maybe in some forums, only what he knew. That Akatani was a kid who had been taken by the government and had never returned. That he'd been one among many. Plant seeds. He had to show them how core their system was. The change wouldn't be immediate. He still needed evidence to go with the seeds, but it would be something at least. And there would be change eventually. He just hoped it wouldn't be too late. Months passed and everything went better than expected, mainly because Sakutachi and Nezu had found out and joined in. They'd spread rumors all over the internet. Of course they weren't just rumors. People dug out more and more evidence of strange disappearances regarding kids given to the government, and slowly reports came up. People collected all the information and compiled it, with horrifying results. It seemed that there were eyewitnesses. People who saw kids running, but they suddenly fell as their hands and legs were tied by weird energy. A few witnesses had seen kids fighting in dangerous situations they weren't ever supposed to be in. And slowly the truth came to light. how they'd all been vigilantes, how they'd all once been a part of the system before ultimately being taken away per government orders, taken to a place that specialized in helping the mentally unstable criminals. In other words, they tortured kids. Mental torture is more detrimental than physical. Don't lock someone up when they're claustrophobic. Don't put them in small white rooms and think they'll come out okay. Don't silence them with threats of sensory deprivation. People were outraged, especially when the details of Akatsune's suicide came to light. Somehow, in what atrocious deeds they had done to the poor boy. Shouta suspected Stray had something to do with that article, not to mention the picture as well as the cuffs Akatsune had worn when he had died. Those unassuming cuffs. Akatsune's freedom had been taken because of them. He'd never been allowed to run around. He'd never been allowed to leave. And when he tried, they would snap into place and restrain him like some criminal. A 15-year-old child. He'd been 12 when they captured him, 7 when he'd ran away, slipped past the system that had been supposed to protect him. Instead, it sent him off to be tortured in different foster homes. He'd been broken, and in the end, he died alone. People were outraged. Some tried to argue that Akatsune and the other kids were quirkless. A few articles came out about it, but somehow there were always someone who said that they were treating people without quirks as non-human, that they were stuck in a mentally that had caused these deaths in the first place. There was a lot of debate and chaos, but it slowly made the HC uncomfortable because voices were getting louder. Whenever it felt like it was getting quieter, another article surfaced about another child, another incident, another strange occurrence or fact someone had dug up about the shady cooperation. People demanded answers. They demanded truth. HC tried to calm them down, but then they tried to lie and disprove the evidence. It really wasn't surprising to some that a few of the HC's crimes were also brought to light, like the legacy program. HC had taken children, bought them from their parents, on occasion even stolen them, using lies to train them to become heroes. One of those people were Takumi Keigo. They'd completely taken away his identity. They'd taken away his name and his childhood. He was supposed to debut soon as Hawks. That went out the window. And truly, no one trusted the government to take the children to a proper home. The public distrusted them now. Takumi Keigo and the other children in the legacy program were taken from them, but the people were still wary. They kept a close eye on the children, to appease them. The children were taken to live with heroes and at other secure locations, like UA and Shiketsu, because they weren't connected to the government as tightly as everything else. That really sped up the process of making dorms. Somehow, Takumi Keigo ended up at UA. He and the other children who had been taken there were extremely confused about everything. Villains tried to take advantage of the chaos. They would have succeeded if there hadn't been vigilantes around. Heroes had to work harder than ever under the scrutiny of the public. Even though their attention was on the government, they were still wary of the heroes as well. Who was to say they were innocent? Vigilantes got caught by heroes. Who else would be able to catch them? There was so much chaos. Shouta didn't bother to catch up on it all. He learned that he needed to help. He learned what he needed and helped when he was needed. All that mattered was trying to get the government to accept this bill, which, due to the scrutiny, the public approved of the idea. They would rather license the vigilantes than let them be tortured. Soon enough, the public started pressuring the HC. Protests were made, petitions were started. Everyone wanted justice for the kids the system had failed. And slowly it seemed to work. They were running out of options and lies. They had to back up little by little, and the people kept pushing. Eventually they said they would hold a meeting, of course under the scrutiny of the public. It was a step into the right direction. It would be another month for the bill to be passed, and another 3 for it to be established fully, with trusted schools. The first known vigilantes to be officially offered this clause were Pep Step and the Crawler. They were both well known and liked by the public. They were efficient and didn't use excessive force, so it really didn't come as a shock for them to be offered the clause. They were the first vigilantes to be able to obtain a hero license that way, and the public agreed with it. Not everyone, of course not, but compared to before, where no one had known, this was better. For the next year, more and more vigilantes were offered the clause. Not everyone took it, no, of course not. Some vigilantes were needed. They towed the gray area of heroes and villains, but they were no longer locked away. Every vigilante was carefully recorded and brushed up on. No one wanted another Akatani incident. The public kept an eye on everything to make sure HC wouldn't try it again. The quirkless vigilantes got released. Unfortunately, the damages had been done. They were too broken, some were too violent to be normal. They all died one way or another. It was too late for them. The public grieved for them. A memorial was made. Protests started for quirkless equality. This all had started because quirkless had been treated badly. Something had to change. The public needed change, and they wouldn't take no for an answer. It wasn't easy. Minds couldn't be changed that easily. Some people were just too stubborn, but it was progress, a step in the right direction. And some progress was so much better than stagnation. Still, it was during winter when he finally met his stray again. Oof! This one was a lot more emotional because it hit too home with what's happening in the real world right now, so I'm kind of crying a bit. I hope you've all enjoyed listening to it anyway, though. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you all soon. Bye!